Hello and welcome back to Unipest training. Today we're going to talk about a very important topic, how to effectively execute a subterranean termite treatment. Now, there's only two real ways of doing a subterranean termite treatment. There is the classic trench entry, as we call it, where you dig a trench on the outside of a slab or on the outside of a crawl space and the inside of the foundation wall, and then you fill those trenches with water, generally at a rate of 4 gallons every 10 feet. This water then soaks in with the pesticide, ends up infecting the colony, and you get 100% kill of the subterranean termite colony. That's a trench entry. Now, inside of a house, there's unfortunately seismic cracks in which subterranean termites can come up through the slab. And these seismic cracks are really far away from treatable soil. Here I am standing in the middle of my house, and I am at least 20 feet in both directions away from treatable soil. So there's no way on the outskirts of the house I could reach this colony. So what I will have to do is perform a drill and treat with what's called a sub-slab injector. This is a tool in which I drill through the slab to make it to the ground in which there's a subterranean termite colony, and then I inject with the sub-slab injector into that colony. Now, let's talk about trenching and treating first. A couple of rules. First, you have to have an inspector that's come out and identified that indeed you have subterranean termites. Subterranean termites are very easy to recognize because they have, at least the swarmers have these large wings and very, very small black bodies. They have massive colony sizes, so oftentimes you'll see a lot of swarmers. And they're the only type of termites that leave mud tubes. Mud tubes are a dead giveaway that you have subterranean termites, okay? Sometimes you can see them on the side of cement. Sometimes they'll actually cross in a crawl space from the ground to the actual attic. No matter what type of mud tube, they're singular to subterranean termites. So if you see mud tubes, you know you have subterranean termites. In this case, we actually saw swarmers coming out from a crack underneath the windowsill of the living room. So this was a dead giveaway because I was able to identify that these were indeed subterranean termite swarmers. This is a dead giveaway that the wood underneath that window was being eaten and infested by subterranean termites. So what we have to do is on the outside of the window, dig a trench. This trench generally has to be deep enough to hold a ratio of 4 gallons every 10 feet. Now, a couple of rules on digging this trench. You need to use a hand mattock, okay? The hand mattock is basically a giant pickaxe, okay? And you're gonna be swinging this hand mattock around. Now, it has to be strong enough and big enough to break apart hard dirt and clay. It unfortunately is also big enough to break pipes. So try and do your best to make sure that there's no PVC sprinkler pipes around where you're trenching and treating. It is unfortunate, but as you can see here, every once in a while you mess up and you hit sprinkler heads. So try and not be that guy that messes up and hits sprinkler heads by asking the customer to identify any areas where they know there's sprinkler heads that might be underneath the soil or capped off. Now, once you've dug your trench, okay, you have to make sure that there's no area where excess pesticide will spill off into a waterway or into the gutter. You have to make sure that the trench will hold all of the pesticide. And then what you do is you go back to the truck, you mix the proper amount of pesticide, and then you apply that pesticide to that trench, basically making sure that you have a rate of about 4 gallons every 10 feet. If you read the label of Taurus and Termidor, for example, in not as receptive soil, you can up the percentage from 0.8 ounces per gallon to maybe 1.2, and in some pesticides you're allowed even 1.6, okay? Either way, read the label of the pesticide we're using. For subterranean termite jobs, we recommend using Taurus or Termidor because the active ingredient is fipronil, which is very very effective. And then once you've filled those trenches with the pesticide, make sure you backfill those trenches, usually once it's dried, with the same dirt that you took out. So you maintain a little bit of the aesthetics of the home, okay? Now, you can't trench and you can't treat. In this example here, this mud tube that was found going in between the slab of the garage and the slab of the raised home. There was a large subterranean termite infestation inside whose only manifestation was this small mud tube. Now, to get to the dirt underneath this spot in the garage, I need to use what's called a sub-slab injector, okay? Well, then what you gotta do first is you have to use a Hilti drill to drill holes through the slab to make it to where the infested dirt is. Okay, when it's time to do sub-slab injection, you're going to need to use a hammer drill, all right? This is a rotary hammer drill, meaning that it's got enough power to not only drill, but also has an interior hammer that's hitting the drill while it's rotating, so you can use masonry bits to drill through the incredibly hard cement. Most of this cement that they pour in foundations can withstand 3,000 to 5,000 PSI, so you need a really big drill. You'll notice that we use mostly Hilti drills. The company Hilti drill is marked top. That's really important because when you open it up, you want to make sure that you open it the right way so everything doesn't fall out. Now, inside of the Hilti drill, you will find the plugs that we use to refill the holes once we've created them, several bits used in different circumstances, and the actual Hilti drill itself. There's also some machine lube that you can use on the drill to make sure everything's functioning properly. Make sure this thing is maintained well and ready, and take it out. You will now also need to get out the 1/2-inch drill bit. Now there's two types of drill bits, okay? There's drill bits that have a crisscross configuration, in which you'll notice very close up there's actually 4 of these kind of teeth, and then there's the spade configuration where there's only 2 teeth, okay? Now the difference between these 2 bits is both are a 1/2-inch in diameter and both will work. This will rip through rebar. This generally stops on rebar. You can use the safety mechanism that's an ignition interrupt system to make sure if you hit something metal like a metal pipe that it will stop, or you can use this 2-bit system so you really can't go through anything. Be very careful when you're using this. This is only if it's extremely difficult cement and you know for a fact, as in you've seen the blueprints, that there's nothing below it. In all other cases, just be a little bit patient and use the 2-bit system, okay? What you're going to do is you're going to take out the drill, you're going to pull this back, and you're going to stick this in. It's now locked, loaded, and ready to be plugged in and go. When you're going to drill your first hole, you want to make sure that you don't drill in at an angle. That's always bad. You always want it to be perpendicular, and you got to make sure that it's not where the drill is going to hit and mark up the drywall. So get as close as you can without marking up the drywall, and then go every 12 to 18 inches depending on what the pesticide you're using recommends. And by the way, this gets really, really loud. So you'll notice inside of your compliance bag, and generally with the Hilti drill, comes some ear protection. You are going to want to use this. Okay, you notice how the drill bit all of a sudden gave way? That's because I know I've hit the soil underneath the foundation. What you're going to do is you're going to move to the next area to see where it's supposed to be, which is going to be right there, about the length of one shoe. All right, and you're going to drill the next hole. These holes should be done once every 12 to 18 inches apart, depending on what the prescription of the pesticide is. I usually like doing every 12 inches just because then it's easy to know the distance that you've traveled. And the general rule of thumb is that from wherever you find the infestation, you want to go 6 to 8 feet around that area. So in this case, you'll notice I went 5 feet one way, 5 feet another way, just to cover my bases. Now, in order to drill into these holes that we created, we're going to use the B&G sub-slab injector, okay? The spray rig pumps out at a rate of about 1.3 gallons per minute, which means if we're going to get the 10 gallons of Taurus or Termidor that we need, the 4 gallons of Taurus or Termidor that we need every 10 feet, we know we're going to have to put about 25 to 35 seconds worth of pesticide in each hole, okay? Now, let me tell you a little bit about the B&G sub-slab injector. It's made by B&G, just like our handheld applicators are. It connects to the regular quick connect that comes off the back of the spray rig, very simply just like this, okay? There are a couple of settings on here, okay? This is the trigger. If you pull this trigger, a bunch of pesticide is going to come out. This right here is the tension adjuster, okay? And the reason why there's a tension adjuster here is because when you pull this little screw drive lever down, you'll notice at the bottom of the B&G sub-slab injector, there's a little rubber grommet. See this little plastic piece of rubber, okay? Now, I'm gonna show you really fast, if you home in on that plastic piece of rubber. When this sheath comes up, okay, it actually flares out that little piece of rubber a little bit. Do you see how it flares it out? Okay, boom, let me try that one more time. When this sheath comes up, I'll do it slower, it flares out that little piece of rubber. Did you see that? Mm-hmm. Okay. That little flared out piece of rubber is important because that's what keeps the pesticide from coming back up down the hole. So when we stick it inside of the hole and then we lock it, that little piece of rubber right down here is keeping the pesticide from shooting back up out. And the way you adjust that tension to make it flare out more is to adjust more tension on the knob. To make it flare out less is to adjust less tension on the knob, okay? It's regular lefty-loosey, righty-tighty. And the reason why you need that tension on the edge is so you don't squirt yourself in the face with pesticide, and you also don't have unnecessary leaks. You don't want to flare it out too much either, or else you damage this little piece of rubber. So that's what this little sub-slab tension knob is for. Now, it's not a huge deal because most of the time, even if it's not completely flared out, the pesticide is not going to come out. But just in case it does, to avoid some kind of violation, make sure you have that running. Anyway, this now is ready to rock and roll. We're going to go back to the truck and we're going to pressurize the system. So I've drilled all of my holes once every 12 to 18 inches with the 1/2 inch drill bit. Now I've mixed the pesticide at the proper mixture ratio and I have attached my sub-slab injector to my rear hose. We press this and you'll notice the pressure goes back up. Let's go back over here. Now that we're ready to go, we're going to find our first hole. Oh, and by the way, knee pads will totally save you in this process. All regular PPE rules apply. Make sure you add knee pads and ear protection while drilling to the list on Subterranean Termite jobs though. So anyway, you're going to go down into the hole, okay? You're going to flare out that grommet just simply by pushing this down, and now you're ready to go. And you just simply count. You can look on your watch if you want, but you let it go for about 30 seconds. Now you'll notice it's already working because look, some is actually coming out from the sub-slab injector right there. Okay? If you start noticing that that happens, go a little bit slower, but if it persists on happening so you don't have a spill on your hands, just move on to the very next hole. It means it's not very receptive soil below. And it's fine though, because this isn't right by where the infestation is. This is far away, so we don't have to worry about it. Now, next one. This is a lot more receptive. Now, in a perfect world, you actually could push in this level lock and leave it to keep going. But I don't recommend you do that because you might just forget, walk away, and have a flood of pesticide on your hands. So once you've drilled and you've treated, you'll notice you're going to have these big ugly mounds of dust. Well, all you got to do is you're going to take your dustpan and your hand brush, and you're just going to really organized, janitor style, just clean up that dust as best you can. Now you're going to be left with this little hole. That's where these plugs come in, okay? Now these plugs can just be ripped off by hand if you want to, but then you have this ugly little nub on the end that doesn't look very good. So what I prefer to do instead is I just use my multi-tool. You can use a razor blade or you can use the tin snips that we use on exclusions. And you're just going to cut off that little nub with the wire cutter part. And then that way it's all nice and round and good looking. So what I do is I count the number of holes and then I cut off the number of plugs that I'm going to need. Now the reason why we have these plugs is because the Structural Pest Control Act says that if you drill through cement, you have to fill the holes that you created to drill through the cement for the treatment with a, quote, non-cellulose material. So if it's a really ritzy cement job and it looks nice and you have to try and color match it, what you can do is you can actually take the dust from the cement that you bored out and you can mix it with new mortar mix in a peanut butter jar, and then you can stuff it inside of the hole that way, so hopefully it looks a little bit nicer. But if it's regular cement in a garage, you don't have to worry about it. You can use these little plugs, and once you've dusted the holes like that, you take these little plugs and you simply just stick them right in. There's no real adhesive that's necessary. There's no real glamorous way of doing it other than simply placing them in. It's a pressure fit or a gravity fit. And the nice thing is, once they're in there, you can barely tell from far away where it is that we treated. In review, if you're going to use the sub-slab injector, you have to make sure that you have your Hilti drill, that you have your sub-slab injector itself, that you have a vehicle with a trailer or a spray rig in it, and you have the proper pesticide mixed inside of that spray rig. You're going to drill the 1/2-inch holes, making sure that you avoid any kind of pipes or any kind of gas lines. You don't want to be that guy that makes that error. And then once you've made the hole, you use the sub-slab injector to inject the pesticide inside at a rate of 4 gallons every 10 feet. Once you have finished that process, you take out the sub-slab injector and you put the plugs in. After that is done, it's complete, and usually it looks nice enough that unless you're looking for the plugs, you can't even tell where we treated in the garage. Now, in a third case, homes with crawl spaces, you're going to do a hybrid treatment between the two. You're going to trench and treat the outside, but then you're also going to trench and treat the inside. When you trench and treat the inside, one of the technicians is actually going to have to crawl underneath the home, and with the hand mattock, the small hand mattock, is going to have to dig the trench on the inside of the crawl space that is necessary to fill with pesticide on the inside of the crawl space as well at the same rate of 4 gallons every 10 feet. So if the home is built on the slab and the treatable area is on the outside of the house, underneath a windowsill or underneath where you see the mud tubes, you have to trench and treat, trying to avoid PVC pipes. If it's on the inside of a home, you have to use the sub-slab injector and the Hilti drill to drill and treat with the sub-slab injector the area there. And if the subterranean termite infestation is on the inside of the home and is coming up through the crawl space, you have to put on your crawl suit, you have to put on your respirator and your goggles and your PPE and your bump cap, go under the house, trench and treat underneath the house, and fill that trench with pesticide there. Those are the 3 types of subterranean termite treatments that you can do. If you have any questions, make sure that you call us or your supervisor or Craig, and we'll be happy to assist you in doing the best Unipest job possible.